For the past 2 weeks, over 3,000 passengers have been in quarantine in Japan. You'll have been following this story. It's the Diamond Princess cruise ship.
Yes, now this followed an outbreak of coronavirus on board the ship, which has so far seen over 450 passengers infected. Now, the British couple, David and Sally Abel, that we've all been following, they've been publishing their video diaries, there've been a lot of news shows documenting their time on the ship. Now, they were due to speak to us this morning, but overnight it's been confirmed that the couple have tested positive for coronavirus.
OK, obviously very worrying for the family. Let's go to their son, Steve, who heard the news like everybody else. And Steve joins us from Salford, near Manchester. Steve, really sorry. Are you worried, or how worried are you for Mum and Dad?
Yeah, very, very worried indeed. I literally got the phone call. Well, I got an email this morning at 6:15, which I FaceTimed them immediately, and I spoke to my mum. And my dad was there, but I didn't actually speak to him or see him. But he was actually being sick. I could hear him in the background, not from the virus, just because probably the shock of it all, and the stress and everything.
I mean, we almost feel like we know them, Steve, because we followed their story very closely. And your dad, David, has some underlying health problems as well, which must be concerning you. Yeah,
if anything, that's probably my main concern. I think the stats on the virus, the recovery rate is actually quite good. But he's a type 2 diabetic, insulin dependent, and he's also got a tooth infection. And I've had messages from people all over the world who are concerned, saying, this is more serious than the virus itself for him. Having an infection and being diabetic at the same time.
OK, well, what about the whole situation, why your parents were quarantined on that ship? Do you think this was a mistake? Are you angry about that? Do you think this was an accident waiting to happen, the fact that they couldn't get off?
Yeah, so looking back across the last 2 weeks, because the quarantine has been a failure, there's obviously, well, we can't change what's happened. I came up to the studios last night in the hope that I would be just trying to get UK authorities to do something to get them back. But at that stage, we were hoping they were going to be tested negative. So waking up this morning, due to be here, and then finding out that they're actually now positive, it just changes a few things. So, so what I want now is for the UK authorities to still go and get them. I know they're tested positive, but I'd like it, ideally, if whatever they're going to be doing in Japan, why can't that happen here in the UK, where my dad can get the right kind of food, all the right treatments here in the UK, not in Japan?
I mean, Steve, we're assuming that they would be taken to hospital, but your dad posted on Facebook, he says, frankly, this is a setup. We're not being taken to a hospital, but to a hostel. That's where partners are sent waiting out their quarantine. No phone, no Wi-Fi, no medical facilities. I'm smelling a very big rat here, waiting for the transfer now.
Yeah.
So are they saying your father will be taken to hospital, but your mum will be going to a hostel? So they will be separated, do you think?
No. So that's been the main worry for the last 2 weeks, separation. When we started hearing about honeymoon couples and being separated, that was my major fear. So hearing that they're both positive kind of like brings a little bit of comfort that they're going to be together. The whole thing with the hostel, is this speculation. We're still in the dark. Literally 5 minutes before I came on here, I was on a FaceTime call to my mum and dad on the ship. They're still on the ship. So 2 hours ago, I found out that they're tested positive. So I was assuming they were going to be frog marched off the ship like others have over the past few days. But they're still on the ship, which surprised me.
Yeah, well, we're hearing from the Foreign Office. They're saying, given the conditions on board, we are working to organise a flight back to the UK for British nationals on the Diamond Princess as soon as possible. They're saying our staff are contacting British nationals on board to make the necessary arrangements. We urge all those who have not yet responded to get in touch immediately. So that's what they are saying. Have you heard anything from them?
They have been calling and speaking to my wife because I've been quite busy this morning. So I've heard the same as what you're saying there, but is that just for people who are testing negative, or is that also for people who are positive?
Not clear. Not clear from
at all. Your parents were on this cruise at the start of a year of celebrations for their 50th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
You know, how are their spirits? Because, you know, they've been making us smile. They seem to have been very upbeat. They accepted the situation to start with. We've really enjoyed talking to them. How are they in spirit today?
Not great, no. So they've had a live feed on their YouTube station with literally tens of thousands of people supporting them all over the world, leaving positive comments, keeping their spirits up. I'm really grateful. They're grateful because they've got to the stage where they are now, feeling quite positive, but now it's all getting a little bit more real. And when I haven't actually spoken to him, I'm speaking to him through my mum. He just didn't want to come to the phone, but he doesn't want to do a live feed this morning on his YouTube channel. So I think he's asked me to do that for him, which I will later on this afternoon.
Okay. Well, Stephen, with us in the studio, and if you could stay and listen, we've got Dr Nathalie MacDermott. She's a clinical lecturer at King's College London and a specialist in infectious diseases. You can see the concern with Stephen there towards his mum and dad, and Stephen saying, look, maybe can they not come home and be treated here? Would that be better or worse for them, the journey involved in all of that? What do you think?
Yeah, so actually, first off, can I just say, Stephen, I'm really sorry to hear about your parents, and I really do hope that they do really well. I think it's a difficult question about whether the government would bring people home or not who are positive. It has to be a risk assessment. So first of all, is it safe to bring them home? Not from the perspective of the infection spreading in the UK, because that wouldn't be an issue, but is it safe for them to travel? It's a long flight, and there would have to be special measures put in place on the flight. And how long will that take to sort out, and what will their medical condition be at that time?
And also, I'm presuming you can't mix them with people who are not infected. So it would either have to be a plane of people who don't have coronavirus or a plane with people that do, I'm assuming.
Well, yes, and also depending on what condition they're in, it might also require a medical evacuation, and so that would become a lot more complex to organise. So it's just a matter of what can be organised and what's best for them at this point in time. That the health service in Japan is very robust and should be able to provide them with the same level of care.
What about the tactic, the strategy of keeping the boat secured in the harbour in Japan and everyone on board?
Yeah.
Because obviously that does not seem to have worked. And I'm reading today that the coronavirus can stay on surfaces, worktops and handrails and lift buttons and all sorts of things for up to 9 days.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a conundrum, because that quarantine should have worked. In fact, it's technically speaking an ideal environment in which to quarantine people, but for some reason it's failed, and I think there needs to be an investigation into what went wrong.
Well, they're having food delivered, weren't they? Medicines delivered. So you're thinking, has it come in that way, possibly?
Well, that's a possibility, but I would imagine that the people who were delivering the food and delivering the medicines would have been taking the utmost precautions. Now, the crew obviously couldn't be fully quarantined because they had to be serving people. Yeah. But largely everybody else was kept within their cabin and only out for an hour or two a day at different stages from other people. So realistically, there should have been minimal contact between individuals.
We saw them, a lot of them were able to come out of their cabins to get some exercise, some fresh air, mostly wearing masks. I mean, you've got a mask with you today. How effective, if at all, are the surgical masks?
So this type of mask, which is sort of your standard relatively flimsy surgical mask, is not very useful at all. I mean, it's useful if you're unwell. So if you're unwell and you wear something like this, it will reduce the amount of spray that comes out when you cough and sneeze. But it's not going to protect you if you're not unwell, particularly, just because it doesn't fit very well. It's quite loose. There's gaps around it. And also, it gets moist quite quickly, because as we breathe out, the air we breathe out is humidified. So eventually it becomes moist. So it doesn't really last for longer than 10 or 15 minutes.
Because we're seeing people wearing these now in airports, on train, public
Big
transport.
Cities.
People are a little panicked. Are you saying, really, it's a waste of time?
Certainly this type of mask is. There's not very good evidence to suggest that this provides any protection. There are other types of masks that might provide more protection, but you have to get the right type of mask.
Stephen, is there anything you would like to ask the doctor in relation to your mum and dad, or any worry you would have, or any advice or any concern that you would like to put to Dr MacDermott?
Yeah, it's more about my dad's diabetes and the infection. I've been getting hundreds of emails and texts over the last 7 days with the concern that that is more serious than them contracting the virus itself.
So certainly him having underlying diabetes does mean that he's got a greater risk from the virus and from any infection, really. But that doesn't mean that he won't do well, and it doesn't mean that he can't come through this virus just fine, OK? So he just needs to get good medical care and be really well supported. And the Japanese Public Health Service and their hospitals are really robust and should be able to care for him. And if he does have a dental infection as well, they can give him the right antibiotics for that, and they can have him seen by dental experts if anything further is needed.
OK. Stephen, good luck.
Please
keep us
wish
posted.
your mum and dad well from us when you speak to them next, won't you?
I will do.
Best
Thank
regards.
you.
Thank you very much indeed. Stephen, whose mum and dad, David and Sally Abel, are quarantined on board that Diamond Princess cruise ship, and they now have been confirmed as having coronavirus. Dr Nathalie MacDermott, thank you very much indeed as well.